This is going to be one of my more personal videos where I talk about myself as a human being and as a financial advisor. And I'm going to focus on some of the mistakes I made with money before I became a financial advisor. So stay with me. For those who don't know, I became a financial advisor at the age of 36, which is not that unusual for this industry. The average age that a financial advisor enters the financial advising profession is about 38, and the average age in the industry is like 57. It's a pretty mature industry. Well, before I was a financial advisor, I had a whole financial life, and I made a bunch of financial mistakes. So I'm going to go through some of those financial mistakes that I made before I had expert knowledge of money. And you may have made many of the same mistakes yourself, or I may have created some new money hassles for people. But share what you think in the comments section about money mistakes and maybe money mistakes that you have made. So first money mistake I made is not really learning about money while I was relatively young. I came from a middle class background. My parents did not have a very sophisticated level of knowledge about money and investing, but they did teach me the basics of paying bills on time, having good credit, and working hard. And I'm eternally grateful to my mother and my father for giving me the absolute basics of the money. But when I went to college, and I went to college in New York, I met other people, other kids who had a much more sophisticated knowledge about money. And I went to a college that was kind of on the bleeding edge of technology. And I firmly remember being in college and my fellow students talking about a website called E-Trade. Now, this is back in like the year 2000. This is some time ago. And they were talking about investments. And I actually remember there was an investment club at my college, and I didn't think it was pertinent or relevant to me at the time. And that would have been a great opportunity to learn about money, to learn about investments, and also to network with the other students. So I'm not sure what I was thinking as 20-year-old Robin when that opportunity was presented, but the opportunity to learn about money and investments certainly was there, and I just didn't avail myself of that opportunity. In retrospect, you make the best decisions you can with the information that you had available, but I often wonder what would have happened if I had joined that investment club and created an early E-Trade account and just bought some stock. Maybe I would be a millionaire, maybe I wouldn't. But I think it would have put me light years ahead just to have that knowledge of investments and just to know what resources were available if I wanted to continue investing. So if you're young, if you're out there, there's much more knowledge available on YouTube, on social media, through readily accessible sources about investing than there was in the year 2000 and in the late 90s. But be sure to utilize whatever knowledge, information, connections, contacts that you can use while you are young to learn information about investing. The next mistake I made, and this was a big mistake, is that I didn't open a Roth IRA. I did not know what a Roth IRA really was until my 30s. I did work in high school. I did work in college consistently. I had pretty decent income for a high school or college students. I could have socked away a couple of $1,000, but I just did not know the Roth IRA vehicle was available. No one mentioned it. No one told me about it. My parents didn't know about it. No one at school really talked about it. And I regret not having that opportunity to take some of that money I earned while working as a student. And that was ultimately squandered in many ways. That could have been used in another life to basically contribute to a Roth IRA fund. Like I said, you make the best decisions with the information you have or the information you don't have. And I just didn't have the information to understand or know what a Roth IRA was, or even if I knew what a Roth IRA was, I'm not quite sure I had the knowledge to be able to open a Roth IRA account. Maybe if I had gone to that investment club meeting at my college, I could have found out all these little bit of details. But One of my biggest regrets is that when I was working in undergraduate and even in graduate school, I did not put away some of that money or even all of that money into a Roth IRA account or even a brokerage account. And all of that money I earned while in college or grad school ultimately ended up being squandered on things I don't even remember and have no lasting value. This was a big one, and I can talk for an hour on this one. Buying a luxury car when I was not ready to own a luxury car. So immediately out of graduate school, I moved home with my parents and I needed a car to get back and forth from work. Well, I made the classic mistake of buying a luxury car to kind of celebrate being, successful, ending school. I thought I had to show it off with a fancy car. And I purchased a car that I loved. I won't name the brand because I don't want to come down on the brand, but I purchased this car. I, scraped together all my money and purchased it brand new. And it was a big accomplishment for me. I felt really proud in driving that car and I really loved the car. Well, after owning the car for a short period of time, I realized that luxury cars are very, very expensive. I remember doing things like I accidentally cracked the windshield from a rock on the highway and had to replace the windshield, which was quite expensive. I ran into a curb with a tire and had to replace the tires, where luxury car tires are incredibly expensive. In short order, there were engine problems after only like maybe a year and a half of ownership, and it was still under warranty. But if the car was out of warranty, I would have spent a lot of money on those engine problems. And there were all these little problems that, in my mind, having a luxury car, luxury, paying more money, having the luxury label means that nothing should ever go wrong with this vehicle. It should be perfect at all times. And it was a very hard lesson, and I ended up spending thousands of dollars on this vehicle on things like maintenance, replacing tires, spending time in the auto shop because it broke down a lot. It was a great car. It looked beautiful, wonderful ride. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it was the wrong car for that stage of life. I wasted a lot of money and a lot of time on a car that I never really should have owned. I ended up selling the car probably 3-4 years later when I realized once the car went out of warranty, all of these repairs would be on me. And these repairs were massive. These were like $4,000 or $5,000 repairs on a relatively low mileage car that was pretty young. And I kind of saw the painting on the wall that this was going to get very expensive very quickly. I sold it and I got a Honda Civic. And the Honda Civic was one of the best cars that I ever had the pleasure of owning. I will say it was a mixed blessing to have this experience with a luxury car. It really taught me that everything is not as it seems with luxury. Just because it's luxury doesn't mean that it is quality or there is reliability in it. It also told me that having a luxury car is expensive. You have to put premium gas in it. You have to do maintenance that you wouldn't have to do with an ordinary car. And that the car you drive isn't nearly as important as you would like to think it is. I was perfectly happy with that Honda Civic. And I'm like, I could have gotten a Honda Civic as my original car and I think it would have been totally okay. No one's going to judge me for driving a Honda Civic. The people who love me will still love me in a Honda Civic as they did for, that fancy luxury car. It really doesn't matter as much as you think it matters to drive a certain car. I carry that ethos with me to this very day. I did a video on this. I drive an old Toyota, and I'm very proud of that old Toyota. It's more than a decade old, but it came from that one lesson, that one disastrous lesson of buying a luxury car immediately out of grad school and having the experience of having that car repeatedly break down and have all sorts of mechanical issues that turned into an expensive hassle and nightmare. Okay. Taking an early withdrawal from a 401k. Yes, I have done that. So it was a period of time in my life in my early 30s. I had lived in Europe for a period of time and come back to the USA. And I went over to Europe with a lot of savings and came back pretty much dead broke. I had a great time in Europe. I did work. I worked teaching English abroad and in several other roles. I had the appropriate visas to work. But I wanted to live above my means. So, I took trips and dined out and had fun. I don't regret that. I don't regret that. But when I came back to the US 4 years later, I had pretty much completely burned through all my savings and I was flat broke. And I made the decision to come back out to California and I needed money to get started. Now, there were other ways that I could have gotten the money. I could have been more judicious about the time in Europe and set aside some money for myself for when I came back to the United States. I could have asked my parents for the money. I could have done a bunch of other things, but I didn't want to do that. And I decided to take an early withdrawal from my 401k. I knew it was a bad thing to do. I knew there was a 10% penalty, but I really had no other source of money remaining to rely on to get me established here in California. So I still remember doing that, and I still remember feeling guilty doing that when I called the 401k company to make that disbursement to me. And, I often wonder today if I had just gotten that money from another source, that $10,000 would probably be worth close to $30,000 today. But once again, it's a life lesson. I would never do it again. I strongly advise other people not to do it again, especially if there's other resources that they can rely on. So this is an interesting one. I've definitely had my employment experiences, and this is long before I became a financial advisor. I had an issue with an employer. I'm not going to name the employer, but it was a bad experience and I was terminated. I was fired. I was fired for what ultimately I knew at the time was an illegal reason. And I made the decision, I've always regretted this, not to sue and not to file for unemployment. It was a personal reason not to do it. It was very contentious. And the kick in the pants about it is I had a colleague who was working at the same place who about a year after I left was terminated under very similar circumstances. She did indeed sue and she won. And I always regretted not taking legal action when I had the opportunity to take legal action against that employer. I definitely think that I had a strong case for discrimination in that termination process. Whenever you encounter a situation where there is discrimination or you have evidence that something happened, have a conversation, a consultation at least with an attorney. Even if you don't want to pursue it right away, there is a window of time that you can pursue that employer. It's one of my deepest regrets in my employment history that I didn't pursue that more. Why I didn't file for unemployment, I don't know. I don't think I understood the unemployment system. And there was another job that didn't quite work out and I was terminated from. That's a whole other story, where I did file for unemployment. And I was like, why didn't I file for unemployment in that first situation? That just didn't. It's sometimes when you've never been fired before and you're in that situation, it's a shock to the system. I know I felt terrible. I felt guilty. I felt like all these feelings about what ultimately was an illegal firing. And it stopped me from pursuing avenues I could have pursued in terms of getting a lawyer to sue the employer. But it also stopped me from pursuing things like getting assistance through unemployment to sustain me while I was looking for my next job. So anytime you encounter a difficulty in illegal firing, discrimination, things like that, stand on business. At least consult with an attorney, see what the timetables are for you deciding whether you are going to pursue legal action or not. And if you do need to pursue legal action, go ahead and do that. File for all the assistance you need, including unemployment, whatever state assistance that you can receive while you look for another job. So that was a big financial regret of mine and could have changed the trajectory of my life and my career had I pursued that pathway. So this one is a huge one. Not negotiating at key points in my career. I used to be really crap at negotiating, especially when it came down to money. And I remember the very first job I took out of grad school was in public health. It was like raw deal public health. And I could have negotiated a higher salary. And I remember my boss came back several months later and told me that I could have negotiated a higher salary. And I remember thinking to myself, dang, why didn't I negotiate out the gate? It's because I didn't know that I can negotiate out the gate. I came from a background where my parents, my mom was a school teacher, my dad was a truck driver. My mom's salary at least was very set. There was really no negotiation about it. So we never talked about negotiation of a salary or a job or what a job should pay or having the confidence to ask for more. And it took me about a decade in the workforce to grow comfortable talking about money and grow comfortable asking for more for myself and now asking for more for my clients. Now that I work with money and now that I've worked with money for almost a decade, I'm to the point where I'm aggressive about money, both for myself and for my clients. I've had to go back several times for myself and renegotiate my salary based on new information. And I've gotten it. I've gotten it. Sometimes closed mouths don't get fed. So the sooner you can learn negotiation tactics and you can become comfortable with negotiation, the better life you will likely lead. There's a lot of information online and YouTube, social media on negotiation and being able to negotiate with confidence what you need in a job, in a position to feel secure. So there you have it, a few financial mistakes from a financial advisor. These were all mistakes that I made before the age of 36. I became a financial advisor at 36 and became very savvy with money very quickly. We all make mistakes with money. We all make mistakes with money. And, I'm very glad I made my mistakes when I was young with my money. It gave me a greater empathy and understanding for my clients because I work with clients through a lot of financial mistakes. And unless you've made your own financial mistakes, you won't be able to understand your client and be able to empathize with your clients. So there you have it. Tell me what you think, tell me what you like, and tell me what you don't like. And if you found this information useful, please like, share, and subscribe. Thank you.